Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? The answer is deals. This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. My name is Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the Deal Quest podcast. Let's get started. Hello, Deal Quest community. This is a solo cast, and I want to talk about international deals. So we've interviewed folks. I mean, our main guests are generally from the US, which is where I am, but we've definitely had folks I've interviewed from Canada and Australia and the UK and various other places. But also, there are many of our listeners and certainly a number of my clients who do international deals. I've been involved in them over the 35 plus years of my career. And there are some very specific things that come up in terms of evaluating, looking for, et cetera, international deals that are different than doing domestic deals. There's a lot that's in common, but there's plenty that's different. And we're not going to be able to cover anywhere near all the nuances and differences. And obviously every international deal in every different country, region is different in many ways. The laws are different. The culture is different. How certain things, are done are different. But, I'm going to try to talk on some high level things that cover various jurisdictions and things to think about, at least if you're considering doing deals either as a U.S. company in the U.S., doing deals outside the U.S. But I will maybe touch on some things about companies that are, looking to do business in the U.S. as well, the other way. So let's say you're a U.S. company. The first question is, what kind of deals, why are you looking to do stuff internationally? And of course, we've moved to such a global economy these days. And listen, it's been interesting. I've been hearing some things on various of, NPR radio stations. There have been some articles, things like that, about how the pandemic and also the supply chain issues, and certainly now the impacts of the war of Russia and Ukraine that's impacted certain goods, certainly, a lot of grain and things like that. Some people are saying is the end of globalization. Listen, I'm not here to make predictions about the future or get into, those kind of issues, but I frankly think that's a ridiculous comment. Now we will change things. I think people are going to have more redundancies. They may go local on some stuff, but, the macro trend is that we're an interconnected world. People are traveling a lot more. Business is done across borders, and there's no question that will continue, and I think certainly in the long term expand. So certainly, listen, for some companies, there's just markets that are available for different goods and services that are less mature than they are in the US, which mean that they have more opportunity potentially, right? And there are definitely companies that take huge advantage of that. Why don't a lot of companies do it? Well, listen, it's like anything else. We talk about the shift even from being a successful entrepreneur generally to the mindset of a deal maker in the first place. And then as an international deal maker or international business in general, obviously there are so many factors, so many unknowns that people are afraid of it. And listen, there are a lot of mistakes you can make, but people who figure it out, can do very well. So what are some of the things you want to watch out for? Well, local knowledge. Okay. This is clear. Like I know some folks, I just had a conversation with somebody who was looking to invest in land in Panama and develop it. The housing is a U.S. guy. He's been living down there a little bit though. I know somebody who's done that in Costa Rica. And, every single time, and those just happens to be real estate deals, but they could be any kind of deal. Let's say you want to sell your products into there and need local distribution, or you're going to do some sort of joint venture, with a local company, which brings us to the point I'm trying to make here, which is that it is absolutely crucial that you have a trusted partner in most cases on the ground in the jurisdiction you are moving into. Now, obviously, it's totally different if you're talking about an online business where, people just access you on the internet from all over the world and, you're selling goods and services that way, or you have online trainings and things like that. It's still good to get local knowledge to be able to customize your product and service and the marketing thereof okay, to the local customers, because there could be things that you just don't understand about how marketing, works, how pricing works, how even describing of the goods works. Certainly, if you're translating into other languages, so you want help on that. But if you're going to be in a business that has any physical presence on the ground, whether it's retail or manufacturing, or even a service business where people need to be located in country, you're so much better off. It's it's not 100% required. People do it without it, but if you can find a trusted partner that could just has connections, that knows the culture, that knows the lay of the land, that knows local and has access to local professionals, local lawyers, local accountants. Business is done very differently in a lot of other countries, right? In some countries, you have the issue where you don't have good laws and good courts to enforce things like intellectual property right protections, right? You're going to want to know that. In other places, they're much more regulated than us, right? As far as, there are a lot of places in Europe where, generally in the U.S., unless you are a member of a labor union, you have employees that are members of labor unions, or they've negotiated a contract with a guaranteed term, which is, only usually high-level executives. For the most part, people are what we call at-will employees. They can be fired for good cause, bad cause, no cause, with, of course, the exception of the anti-discrimination laws, Title VII, all that kind of stuff, the race, any protected class, right? Race, age, gender, orientation, sex, veteran status, disability, things like that. But outside of that, in general, and outside of labor unions and contracts, most employees in the U.S. are at-will employees, and you can terminate them pretty much for any reason, and there's no legal requirement to pay severance. You may have a policy that commits you to that, but in many places in Europe, there are significant restrictions on and hoops you got to go through before you get rid of people. There's certainly lengthy severance mandated by law. In many countries, certain things like changes of ownership or certain financial things have to be filed with the government, which doesn't happen here in the U.S. unless you're a public company. So you really have to know the local laws, but also what are the customs, what are the knowledge, what do you need to know? Even in some places, well, if you don't have local folks, your business is at physical risk. What kind of protection do you have there? You can be respected. In other places, it's just that you just may have a disconnect in even being able to sell products and services, right? So even if you're just selling goods there, which is not the kind of deals we talk about, you're going to want the local knowledge. But a lot of that will trigger you maybe to do a deal, because even if you're just talking about sales into a country, maybe you have a local distributor arrangement. That's a deal. You have a local marketing company. You have a joint venture with an existing company in that location, in that geography, in that country, because it can help you to get even those sales done. And then when you're talking about doing deals, if you want to expand by acquisition or by joint venture, or maybe there's licensing opportunities for your product or service in different countries. Well, you have all of the things that we've talked about in various episodes of this podcast on, the general due diligence and structuring of deals and valuing things and finding the right, targets. And, but you also have to add that you're doing that in what might be an unfamiliar jurisdiction, maybe in a different, with different language and different laws and different customs. So local partnership is most often the way to go. And trusted local partnership, that's the key thing, because people have, there's many examples of people partnering with local folks and then getting taken advantage of. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is certainly, as we talked about the laws, which I think we've covered more enough. They're different in every country. And then let's delve into more the cultural piece, right? Business is done very differently in different places, in some places. And listen, I think a lot of people in business have heard this at the high level of generalities where, there are certain cultures where you get down to business very quickly. We tend to lean that way in the US, although I think building relationship has become more and more important. But, in certain cultures, certainly a lot of the Asian cultures, you need to, and others, you need to spend time. You need to build relationship. You go and you have dinner, and you may go for drinks, you go for karaoke, you go for whatever it is, and no business is spoken on the first meeting or two. If you jump in and try to force a business conversation too early, it's seen as disrespectful. I think I've told this story before. Way back in the 80s, we did a deal. I was working at another law firm in New York City, did a deal where a Japanese company was buying our client's company. And we had a cultural consultant and on the deal. And they got us very, very well. There's, for example, when a Japanese person hands you the business card in the US, we might glance at it and throw it out in our pocket, or, you take it in some of the cultures, including with the Japanese culture, it's a calling card. It's much more formal. You take it in both hands. You look at it. You read it. You acknowledge the person, and then you place it down, nicely in front of you on the table. There are things like that if you don't know, you can run yourself into trouble. And it's not just like a little miss. Sometimes it's seen as a real insult or a sign of disrespect, or a lack of taking them seriously or caring about their culture that can really blow a deal. So it's super important to figure out the pace of deals, the little things, just the formalities of deals, right? In that same deal that I was about to mention, where things went wrong, we did fine on the business cards, but we were not told at that time that we should have fancy pens for each of the signers, because it's customary for them to sign just that deal with it and keep the pen as a memento. You just don't use any pen. You use a special pen that's given as a gift to the signer. Well, you need to know those things if you're going to do deals in other countries, to be able to honor their traditions, just out of respect, which you should do, and then certainly just practically to get the deals done. So so that's important. Also, doing due diligence on deals in foreign places is different. I mean, in some places, in some countries, like I said, there's more financial information that's disclosed, governmentally, and maybe, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's publicly available. Just mean it's available to the government. In some places, there's more that's publicly available. So you got to figure out, whether there is a different due diligence approach, to in that country, and there may be a way you can do it, and then there may be other ways where it's doing lien and judgment searches and litigation and stuff in some places is not as possible. And even what is permitted and how it's, we haven't even gotten to taxation, right? And how the impact of foreign deals, on taxation. And I'm not going to go anywhere near that, because listen, U.S. taxes are complex enough. I've got great tax capability in my firm, where we have an affiliation with a phenomenal tax firm. So, I know enough to identify issues, and, obviously there are domestic things we have done over and over again that I fully understand. But we bring in the tax guys even on domestic deals. So certainly we bring them in on all the international deals. But every country is different, and the key is every combination of countries are different, right? Because of different tax treaties or lack thereof, or the way things are going to be treated, in one place versus another place. So you definitely need to take that into account and get proper representation on the tax side and the accounting side when you do international deals. And it's even more crucial. I think you need it in any kind of deal, but certainly more crucial on international deals.
Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can invite you to a new way to determine your deal readiness. I created a fast and easy assessment that will determine exactly how deal ready you are. Once you complete the assessment, I use your responses to identify the obstacles that are holding you back from being a deal-driven growth genius. It's as easy as heading to CoreyKupfer.com/assessment. That's CoreyKupfer.com/assessment, and filling out a few multiple choice questions. I'll be checking in after the episode to see what your results are. Now back to the show.
Let's talk a little bit about the other way around with companies coming into the U.S. We have represented a number of companies over the years who are setting up U.S. subsidiaries or want access to the U.S. market, or clients that are doing joint ventures or manufacturing and distribution deals with foreign, companies. And a lot of foreign companies will set up, not always, but a lot of times they will set up a U.S. subsidiary because it's often easier for U.S. companies to do business with a U.S. subsidiary as opposed to, with the foreign entity. Not always the case, but that's certainly the case some of the times, and we've done a lot, for folks. The other thing is that when you're doing business with them, you have to keep in mind. Oh, and by the way, and this sort of relates to what I was about to say. If they have a U.S. subsidiary, you have actually something, at least in U.S. jurisdiction, that you can go after if there's a problem. Now, of course, it depends on whether that subsidiary really has significant assets or whether the foreign entity is pulling out any value to be overseas. But in concept, at least, you have a U.S. entity that you can go after if there's any kind of dispute or litigation or breach of a solicit or non-circumvention type clause. I've told the story before about my client many years ago was negotiating with the Russians right after the Soviet Union fell, and they didn't want to sign this non-circumvention agreement to go directly to all the manufacturers and distributors of goods that my client was the broker, the middleman on, because they were no longer under communist rule and they wanted to be capitalists and they wanted to do business with whoever they wanted to. So, you run into those kind of things, and there were ways we deal with them. That's an older example, but certainly the approaches of foreign companies are sometimes, very different. Certainly, deals slow sometimes because you need approval processes, from overseas. You have to allow more time for international tax analyses and ramifications on that way as well. When foreign companies are investing in the U.S., you got to be careful about who owns ultimately these companies. Certainly, if they are indirectly owned by any government that is on any kind of ban, or list or embargo list or boycott list, you could actually run into criminal trouble for doing deals with foreign, companies that are, in certain jurisdictions or even, indirectly. So you got to watch that. You get, there's anti-money laundering laws and things like that, and certain tax withholding on foreign companies that you have to be familiar with. But listen, folks, like I said, globalization is going to continue, with some changes, with some bumps, et cetera, no matter what you say. And, when the folks who can figure out how to do deals, across borders often, can do, expand into brand new markets for their products and services, expand into markets that may even be more receptive because of either the fact that they're less saturated with goods and less mature, and it's a growing market. Or, what's really interesting, what's happened in some countries is that they've sort of skipped steps, right? Like they were so far behind. A great example is some of these countries that were developing countries and had much less infrastructure in terms of phone systems, with wires above or below ground, all that kind of stuff. And, of course, when cellular technology came in, and this is true with some other technologies like that as well, they just jump right to that, right? There may be opportunities if you sell a product or service here that is not yet fully, or where that fundamental function of the product or service, does not exist extensively in a particular jurisdiction, but you're on the cutting edge of technology, and the country moves to that immediately, as opposed to you having to sell against integrated, established utilities or technology or things like that. So on the outgoing way, that's another potential advantage. Yeah, and listen, there's some interesting stuff that comes up with deals that I've seen, let's say coming into America, where foreign buyers are willing to pay more than domestic buyers for some things. And that could be because of currency exchange differences. It could be because they're looking to get money out of their countries because it's less stable there, and at risk, and they want to invest. I mean, there's plenty of foreign money, for example, in U.S. real estate for that reason. And listen, there are issues with that. I'm talking about, legitimate business deals from places with the legitimate people. We can get into politics and the issues around some foreign investment that is done by more unsavory characters. But there are a lot of great companies out there from various parts of the world that are making legitimate investments in the U.S. And I guess the last thing I'll talk about is how, I talked about the idea of if you are doing deals in other places, getting local knowledge, local relationships for that benefit. Well, it happens the other way as well. When companies come into the U.S., they will often look for local partners and local relationships for all the same reasons that we talked about, right? Access to relationships, knowledge of local customs, local law, and all that kind of stuff. So that's another potential opportunity. If you have any kind of relations or you hear of any foreign folks trying to get into your industry, one way to look at them is that they're a threat, they're a competitor, et cetera. But another way to look at them is they're a potential partner, right? You can potentially pitch them and say, listen, you need a local partner here. We really know this space. as opposed to building it. Why don't you buy us, or let's do a joint venture, or a strategic alliance, or let's be your exclusive distributor, or marketer, or channel partner, in the U.S. And there could be all kinds of opportunities there for you in the U.S. to do business with foreign companies that may, even ones that you may initially look at as competitors. And I've done a whole separate Solocast a while back, maybe a year or so ago, on this concept, or at least we've talked about it in part of one and part of some of the guest interviews on this concept of actually, doing business with your quote unquote competitors, and how you can do deals with them, and how you can make that to be an advantage. Certainly, it can be true in this foreign space, because the truth is, somebody who's coming into the market who's new, is it really a potential competitor, right? They do similar to what you do in another country. But they're not yet a competitor if you can get them early, and they could very easily become a collaborator or a partner or a buyer or a strategic partner, joint venture partner, whatever it is. So yeah, listen, like a lot of what we do on this podcast, just throwing out, giving examples of different types of deals that people can do. This happens to be various types of deals in different geographies in different countries. And we really want to just open up, start shift that mindset, start thinking like a deal maker, start looking for the opportunities. International deals are not for everyone. In fact, they're not for probably the majority of companies. But there's enough of a minority of companies. There's a lot of companies out there, many more than are doing international deals, that could be doing international deals either on the outgoing side to other countries, or becoming partners, or in some way with foreign companies that are coming in. Many more opportunities potentially that could be created than companies that are taking advantage of them. Just like there are many companies that can be doing deals in general, but are spending too much time only looking at organic growth. So we want you to expand your mind to look at potential deals that you can go do that will help you grow and benefit your business in general. And that certainly means probably mainly domestically for most companies. But listen, let's go a step further. And for some companies, the international market could be a nice add-on, a nice addition. And for a smaller percentage of companies, it could actually be bigger than what they're doing in the U.S. All right, folks, with that, I'm going to leave you for this week. I will be back with another Solocast in 4 weeks. And we got 3 amazing guest interviews coming up over the next 3 weeks at the DealQuest podcast. So appreciate you, DealQuest community. Goodbye for now.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the DealQuest community. Join the DealQuest Deal Den Zoom calls, a free monthly 90-minute mastermind. In the mastermind, we address all the challenges you may be facing and help support you with the opportunities that may arise in terms of deal-driven growth. You will get input not only from me, but all the members on the call will collaborate and serve each other in a mastermind format. To sign up for the free mastermind, go to www.corykupfer.com/dealden. That's corykupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.